Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something truly epic, the rise of Mauryan power. Imagine taking a massive, completely fractured subcontinent filled with shifting kingdoms and somehow forging it into ancient India's very first pan-Indian empire. I mean, the scale of this is just staggering. We're talking about a total transformation of a diverse landscape into a centralized superpower. So let's jump right in and see exactly how the architects of this ancient political machine actually pulled it off.
But right off the bat, we run into a massive problem. How in the world do you overthrow a kingdom backed by 200,000 soldiers? It's basically the ultimate David and Goliath scenario. Our underdog protagonists aren't just going up against a big army, they're facing this deeply entrenched, incredibly wealthy dynasty that had basically rewritten all the rules of ancient warfare and governance. So who exactly was this colossal Goliath?
Section 1. The Nanda dynasty's dominance. A colossal obstacle.
Let's set the scene. It's the mid-4th century BCE, and the Nanda dynasty is sitting firmly in power, ruling from their strategic capital of Pataliputra. And they were formidable for one very big reason. 200,000. That is the number of infantry soldiers the Nanda king commanded, at least according to later Greek accounts. And hey, that's just the infantry. Those same historical sources tell us this terrifying military machine also boasted 20,000 cavalry, 2,000 war chariots, and a mind-boggling 3,000 war elephants. You can imagine the sheer scale of the standing army was enough to inspire total awe, and honestly, absolute terror across the entire subcontinent.
Now, you don't just magically sustain a military of that size for free. The Nandas had to completely upend the old model of power to make it work. You see, in the past, kingship was all about lineage-based aristocracies and clan alliances. But the Nanda model, it was built entirely on wealth, centralized bureaucracy, and brute military strength. And to fund this beast, they were absolutely ruthless. They slapped incredibly heavy, highly efficient taxes on practically everything. Historians note they even taxed water skins and prostitution. As you might guess, this made them deeply, deeply unpopular. Literally everyone, from the merchants to the Brahmin priest, despised them. So yeah, they were powerful, but they were definitely not loved. Section 2. A vacuum in the West. The catalyst for unification. So while the Nandas were busy squeezing every last drop out of their subjects in the east, this huge external shock was brewing. In 327 BCE, the whole political landscape of the Northwest was totally shattered. Why? Well, Alexander of Macedon decided to invade the subcontinent. He crossed right into the Punjab region, but his campaign ended up being remarkably short. His exhausted troops started hearing these terrifying rumors about that massive Nanda army waiting for them further east, and they just flat out refused to march any further. Alexander had to turn back toward Babylon. But even that brief little incursion was a massive disruptor. It completely destabilized the local rulers and left a gigantic power vacuum in the Indus region. Suddenly, there was this desperate, urgent need for political consolidation. People were terrified that if India didn't unite, another foreign power was just going to sweep right in. Section 3. The rise of Chandragupta. A high-stakes political alliance. In this total chaos, it created a once-in-a-lifetime opening. And honestly, the story gets deeply personal right here. It's this incredible character-driven narrative about two masterminds who saw their shot. On one side, we have Chanakya, who is also known as Kautilya. He was a brilliant but slighted Brahmin scholar who had been personally insulted by the Nanda king and basically swore he'd get revenge. On the other side, there's Chandragupta. He's this incredibly ambitious, displaced youth coming from really humble origins. Chanakya ends up taking Chandragupta under his wing, mentoring him. And together, they start painstakingly building this grassroots mercenary coalition. They rallied all those disaffected regional leaders and frustrated soldiers to finally challenge the tyrannical Nanda regime. And if we look at the timeline here, it really illustrates just how incredibly fast these two moved. Okay, so Alexander invades in 327 BCE. A mere 5 years later, by 322 BCE, Chandragupta's forces actually do it. They capture Pataliputra, kick out the Nanda king, and officially birth the Mauryan Empire. I mean, it is a shockingly rapid rise to power. And he didn't stop there. By 303 BCE, he's already busy securing the realm's outer borders with a massive diplomatic treaty. Section 4. Forging the First Empire. Expanding the borders.
You see, taking the capital was really just step one. Chandragupta knew he had to secure that highly volatile northwest, which was now being held by the remnants of Alexander's generals. More specifically, he was up against Seleucus Nicator, the guy who founded the Seleucid Empire, and he was actively trying to win back Indian territories. But Chandragupta met him with such fierce resistance that Seleucus quickly realized a diplomatic settlement was a way better idea than getting bogged down in a protracted war. And the terms of this treaty are just mind-blowing. Get this. Chandragupta traded 500 highly prized war elephants over to Seleucus. In exchange, the Mauryan Empire got massive northwestern territories and a marriage alliance just to seal the deal. It was an absolute masterstroke of Indo-Greek diplomacy.
With the borders finally secure, the Mauryan capital just absolutely blossomed. Just listen to this quote from Megasthenes. He was a Greek ambassador who actually visited Chandragupta's court. He wrote about, quote, wide avenues, wooden houses, raised on platforms, and formidable walls guarded by towers and gates. Megasthenes was literally awestruck by it all. He paints this super vivid picture of Pataliputra as a thriving, cosmopolitan metropolis. He even noted that they had a council of 30 officials dedicated just to overseeing the city's governance, justice, and trade. It had become a true, bustling imperial center.
Section 5. The Blueprint of Statecraft. Running the Mauryan Machine. So it's one thing to conquer a massive territory, but how do you actually run a pan-Indian empire day to day? To understand that, we have to pivot away from military conquest and look at the administrative genius that kept this massive new Mauryan machine running. And the absolute key to it all is this text, the Arthashastra. This is a foundational ancient Indian treatise on statecraft, economics, military strategy, and even espionage, and it's widely attributed to Chandragupta's mentor, Chanakya. What makes the Arthashastra so fascinating is its tone. You won't find any lofty, idealized philosophy here. It is grounded in pure, ruthless realism. It treats the state not as some loose collection of loyalties, but as a highly disciplined machine engineered entirely for order, control, and economic prosperity.
And when you look at how that translated into actual policy, you realize the Mauryan state was incredibly sophisticated. They standardized coinage, weights, and measures, which was huge for facilitating widespread commerce. They ran extensive land revenue surveys, meticulously measuring out land just to guarantee a steady stream of taxation. They regulated their markets to ensure fair pricing. But honestly, perhaps the most striking feature is their vast network of spies and informants. When you put it all together, what we are really looking at here is effectively an ancient surveillance state. It was meticulously designed to monitor dissent, double-check administrative integrity, and make absolute sure the empire's granaries and storehouses were always full.
Now, to actually manage all of that data and control, they used a very strict step-down hierarchy. Right at the top, you have the emperor, who is advised by a council of ministers. A step below them, the empire is divided up into provinces, and those are run by royal appointees. And that filters all the way down to local officials and scribes who are managing the districts, and even individual villages down on a micro level. And holding the whole shebang together was this incredibly well-maintained network of roads and messengers, keeping this incredibly organized, highly centralized bureaucracy communicating swiftly across vast distances.
But right here is the narrative twist that makes Chandragupta's story so incredibly compelling to me. Because after dedicating his life to building this hyper-pragmatic, deeply monitored, totally military-backed empire, he just walks away from the whole thing. According to later Jain traditions, Chandragupta actually grew profoundly disillusioned with absolute power. He abdicates the throne, hands it over to his son, and fully embraces Jainism. He spends his final years living this life of strict asceticism, ethical conduct, fasting, and meditating.
Which leaves us with a final, really profound question to ponder. If the ultimate ancient empire was built on strict surveillance, intense taxation, and unmatched military might, what does its founder's final choice to become a meditating ascetic tell us about the true nature of power in ancient India? It's this absolutely fascinating tension between ruthless statecraft and deeply personal morality. Well, that is a wrap on today's Explainer. Thanks so much for joining me.